welcome to Miss Peepers Reading Corner. I'm Katrina, aka Miss Peepers. Let's talk about books. So, it is July. How is it July? Explain this to me. I know I say this, I've been saying this recently. The year seems to have been zipping right past. A few things I want to talk about. We're going to talk about a book, of course. But before we get into that, I wanted to give a little update on my first 6 months of the year, which I know I've talked here about how I decided to stop buying books for 6 months. So it's a self-imposed book buying pause. I know I use the word ban. I probably shouldn't. But as someone who is very much against banning books in general, but a self-imposed book buying pause for the first half of the year. And I'm quite proud of myself. I only bought 2 books, and I'll talk about those. One, which I've mentioned before, was not the Anthropocene Reviewed. I read that some time ago. Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green, same author, different book, which I talked about in a previous video. Definitely encourage you to check that out if you have any interest in that book. So good. I'm so glad that I read it, because John Green is an auto-buy author for me, and that book came out right in the middle of my book buying pause. So I got that. So that was one of the books. The other book, I feel like, was not as much worth a break, although it'll make some good content when I finally finish it, which is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. I wish I had chosen not to give a fuck about buying that book, but it's so bad it's going to make a good video. And there we go. So when I'm done reading that, hate reading that, I'm going to make some content about it, because I have a lot to say about that. So stay tuned. But anyway, other than those 2 books, though, I did not buy anything else. I did not bring any books into my house myself. I did not go to the little free library. I did not go to his bookstore. I read the books that I had in my house, which was pretty great. I also, last month, participated in the Amazing Readathon, which you've heard me mention on this channel as well before. I was part of the Lore Keepers, and it was announced earlier today, or actually yesterday, that the Lore Keepers won. Yay! I was actually on the winning team. How about that? That was not true last year, but we did well last year. We did not win. So very excited about that. I personally read 17 books for that readathon, and actually all of which were in my physical TBR, so that felt really good. So where I am right now, I'm decided that I'm not going to keep to a particular goal for where my physical TBR should be at the end of the year, but I'm still tracking it, because I do think it's interesting to see how my collection moves up and down. So right now I have 327 books left on my physical TBR, which is down from 341 in March when I started tracking this. So so that's actually pretty good. I feel good about that number. I've been reading my books. How about that? And I did have a little bit of a slow start to the reading year, but definitely June was a bit of a catch up, and a bit of just getting back into the swing of reading regularly and reading a lot. So that was really fun. It was really good to go to reading sprints, or attend reading sprints virtually again. That was really nice. And so it reminded me that I want to do that more. I got a little bit out of the habit. Sometimes it's hard with schedules, and some booktubers are filming reading sprints while I'm in my work day, so I can't participate. I can't just say, screw work, I'm just going to sit down and read. If only. If only. But that's all right. I'm pretty excited about keeping this momentum going a bit. And with that in mind, um, with that in mind, I did finish a book. One other thing, so my husband is such a sweet man, and as I guess a congratulatory gift, he gave me a congratulations gift for finishing the first 6 months of the year mostly without buying books, like meeting that goal. And so he got me this gorgeous, oh, it's backwards. Hold on a second. Hold, please. Let me turn myself around again. I got a new webcam, and I really like it, and it stays better on top of my on top of my monitor, and it's a little fancier than the one I had before. The one I had before was a simple, basic kind of let's see if streaming works for me kind of camera. This one's a little bit fancier, but anyway, but I mirrored the image, and that doesn't actually make sense for a booktuber. I didn't think that through. So anyway, he got me this leather bound edition of Jurassic Park, which is gorgeous, like gorgeous. Look at this. And the end pages are like this, are cloth. So it's this nice cloth. I don't know how well you can see that. And this book is just beautiful. It is signed by Michael Crichton himself. Hold on, let me get to the page where he signed. Where is it? I can do this. This is just like, it's like signed and certified. Look at that. That's a signature. It came with a little certificate of authenticity. This is the real deal, y'all. My husband is such a wonderful man, and it's got illustrations in it. And I was flipping through the illustrations. This arrived on our front porch maybe 20 minutes ago, before I started streaming, and just like, look at these. Ooh, come on. Look at these illustrations. Just really gorgeous edition. So, wow. I married well, y'all. Look at this. This is just so generous and sweet. And, yeah. He knows that books are my love language, and this is really, really wonderful. So I'm going to have to find a place to display this, I guess, to honor this in its glory, because this is just, man, beautiful edition. So I'm very happy about that. I'm just kind of blown away by it. I was not expecting it. And so it's really sweet. Okay. Anyway, so there's my mini book haul, my one book haul. I will still keep my edition. Like, I will probably read this. I know people are like, oh, well, leatherbound, that's not the reading edition. I'm totally going to read the special edition, but I'm going to read it more carefully than I would the original or the mass market paperback that I have, and that'll be more of the carry around, stuffing your bag kind of copy, versus this will be more of the, yes, I will read it, but I will read it like in my library, and keep it safe. So very excited about that. Okay, speaking of excitement, I just finished a book. This did not quite make it in time for my did not make it quite in time for the Amazing Readathon. I actually finished it yesterday, and I loved it so much that I wanted to talk about it immediately. So Mr. Peepers and I traveled this past weekend, and I was in the airport, or right before we were going to the airport. The last task of the Amazing Readathon popped up, and it said, read 50 pages of a new book, a book you have not started. So start a new book, read 50 pages. And I traveled only with books that I had already started, because you can only pack so many books in your bag. So I stopped in the newsstand bookstore at the airport, and I got this. Now I'd heard about this book, The September House by Carissa Orlando, if you can't see that. And apologize for the blur in the back. I blurred my background because it's a hot mess back here. Like, don't even pay attention to the disaster. I've been traveling. So anyway, the September house, and I did put it this so I don't have to hold the book the entire time I'm talking. So the September house is one that I'd heard about from a couple of booktubers. I think Lexi talked about it. I think it's where I heard about it first, and a few others I think have mentioned it. And I saw it and I was like, oh, let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. And I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that I have this book. I did read the first 50 pages as I was supposed to. I logged it and then I just kept reading. And I finished it yesterday, as I said. So, yeah, so the September house, what is this? This is a horror novel. It's about a haunted house. And I am going to put up some content warnings because there definitely are content warnings in here to be aware of when you're going in. As always, if you have any challenges with any of these topics, and to the point at which it is not good for your mental health to read the book in question, then don't. Look after yourself. Please look after yourself. There are many excellent books. There are many excellent horror novels that don't necessarily touch on all of these topics. So find books that are good for you in your mental health. But the content warnings for this one, there's quite a lot of gore. It's quite a lot of gore. There is some domestic violence. It's a pretty prominent portion of the plot line. There's alcoholism in here. There's murder. There is suicide. And of course, because it is a ghost story, there are ghosts and hauntings, haunting activities associated with them. So just be aware of those things. Just be aware of those things going in. But let's talk about this book because I really, really loved it. So we are following a couple named Margaret and Hal. They are married. They've been married for some time. They have an adult daughter who has moved out of their house, and they together have decided to buy a home. Margaret came across this old Victorian house. The price was too good to be true. It was a red flag. They ignored all the red flags and they bought this house, and it turns out to be haunted. And we're following Margaret's first person narrative, and I really love that choice because Margaret is not a reliable narrator. She is not reliable at all, and she's very matter of fact about the hauntings in her home. And it's called the September House, or the book is called the September House because every September the hauntings get particularly bad. The walls start to bleed, and the ghosts get restless, and the thing in the basement it gets particularly active in September. And so we're following this couple. Margaret, however, is not going to let a few ghosts and a little bit of wall blood stop her from living in her dream home. She loves this house. She feels it was meant to be. It's the kind of house she always wanted to live in, and she will be damned if she lets these ghosts run her out of her own home. And the way she talks about it is just so matter of fact and humorous, and which I just love. And she talks about how she knew was like she talks. The prologue describes the tour that they took with the realtor and just like the different red flags that kept popping up, and she just totally ignores all of those things. And I do love this because the first chapter, chapter 1, I'll just read the first little bit of it just so you can get an idea of the kind of tone of the story. The walls of the house were bleeding again. This sort of thing could be expected. It was, after all, September. The bleeding wouldn't have been so bad if it hadn't been accompanied by nightly moaning that escalated into screaming by the end of the month like clockwork. The moaning started around midnight and didn't let up until nearly 6 in the morning, which made it challenging to get a good night's sleep. Since it was early in the month, I could still sleep through the racket, but the sleep was disjointed and not particularly restful. Before Hal absconded to wherever he went, he used to stretch and crack what sounded like the entirety of his skeleton. Margaret, he would say, we're getting old. Speak for yourself, I would reply. But he was right. I was starting to feel a bit like the house sometimes, grand but withering. shifting in the wind and making questionable noises when the foundation settled. All the moaning and screaming business in September certainly didn't help me feel any younger. Um, so Margaret just has this matter of fact approach. She's funny, and she's like, look, just it's a way of life. And the tagline, and something that is Margaret's personal philosophy on life, is that everything can be survived. Everything is survivable. And she keeps saying this throughout. she truly believes it, that any situation can be survived, and she intends to do that. Now, there's more going on behind the scenes. Obviously, there is the haunted house story, which in some ways follows the the tropes and I guess structure that you would expect from a haunted house story that you hear in various ghost stories of, like, okay, this house is haunted. Who lived here? Who died here? Let's do some research. Let's figure out what's going on. Let's do our best, like Sam and Dean Winchester, if you're a Supernatural fan. Let's do our investigation and figure out what these ghosts want. Is there unfinished business that we can help them achieve so that they can rest? All that stuff. So, Margaret does these things. And part of the storyline, part of the story is that. But then we also get a bit into Margaret and Hal's relationship with each other, their relationship with their daughter. And there are so many, like the haunting is a metaphor for other things that are going on in Margaret's life. And it's kind of hard for me to talk about this too much without spoilers. So I think I'm going to put up my spoiler banner. But before I do that, because I know if you don't want spoilers, you might just be like, all right, I'm going to read this book. Please read this book. Again, look after yourself when it comes to the content warnings. If you're not a horror fan, if you don't like scary stories, I totally understand. But like, if this is at all intriguing to you, read this book. It is so good. It is so well written. I think it's a debut novel. I meant to look that up. I believe this is a debut novel. And I hope that Carissa Orlando writes more, because I would love to read it. But there's a lot of really intriguing stuff in here, and a lot of different pieces. And throughout the entire book, you find yourself, or at least I found myself as a reader, going back and forth on what I thought was going on. And because Margaret is an unreliable narrator, you wonder at moments, well, is the haunting real? Is this really happening? Or is it in her head? Is she imagining it? Is she making it up? Like, what's going on? Is there some sort of mental illness at play? Like, what is happening? And I won't tell you. I won't, regardless, I will not spoil the end, because that's a dick move. But I will, I will put up my spoiler banner and talk a little bit more about some of the metaphor and some of the themes that are going on in this book. So if you don't want those, totally understand. You can hop off here. I've got other videos. But if you're still here, let me turn on the spoiler banner. If you're still here, let's get into a bit about this book and what goes on in it. Again, I won't spoil the very end, because I really feel like that needs to be experienced. Although I will say, like, my jaw was on the floor the whole time I was reading it. It's very emotional. It was so good. Anyway, so now we're in spoiler territory. If you're still here, you don't mind being spoiled, or you've read the book already. So one of the things that I just love about this book is the structure and the way that it's put together. The first part of the book, we're learning about Margaret and Hal and the haunting, this house that they've purchased. And Margaret talks about how she is becoming accustomed to this house, how she loves this house. Like, you just have to learn how to live with the ghosts. You have to figure out the rules of the different ghosts. And for me, as someone who watches and reads a lot of supernatural stuff, I love it. To me, that makes perfect sense. Like, supernatural creatures, they have they have typically have rules that they follow. It things like, vampires can't be in sunlight, or werewolves can be killed by silver bullets. Obviously, those things, the exact rules may vary depending on what supernatural universe you're reading about, or watching, etc. But there's a set of things that are true about each supernatural creature. They're all different. So when she's talking about, like, you just got to understand the rules of the house. There's a child ghost named Elias. Elias bites if you get in his personal space. So if you don't want to be bitten, you don't get into his personal space. You give him space. That seems reasonable to me. I'm a cat parent though, so like I understand that a bit of like, no, you don't antagonize a cat and a cat won't swipe at you. Like, so that makes sense with the ghost child as well. If we're talking about like a living child, that's a whole different scenario. Like, you've got to deal with that behavioral problem. But we're talking about a ghost child. This is not a human. Or it's an ex-human, if you will. And so she's talking about like these rules and how like, one of the rules is we don't go in the basement. The basement is where Master Vale, the thing in the basement, which calls itself Master Vale, that's his name. And Master Vale is in the basement. We don't go in the basement. Fair enough. That's why the basement's boarded up. We do periodically bring in an exorcist because, it's good to cleanse the place a bit. It's not a permanent solution, but it calms things down periodically. And Margaret doesn't want her daughter to come to the house because, one, she doesn't want to expose her to the ghosts, but also she's afraid that her daughter will talk her into leaving, and she does not want to leave. Then we start to learn, so that's the first part of the book. Then we start to learn, sort of in the middle of the book, there are really, I guess, three segments, if you will. The middle of the book, we're learning about Margaret and Hal and their daughter Catherine. And we've heard bits and pieces at the beginning that Catherine moved out pretty much as soon as she could. She went to college and never came back. Basically, they're kind of estranged. We learn that Hal has a drinking problem. That's where the alcoholism comes in. We learn that he abuses alcohol, and something happened, but we don't quite know what. And Catherine has separated herself from the family. And you look at the content warnings, you can probably guess about where, kind of what that is. But then we learn that Hal has been abusive towards Margaret as well, and that Margaret has, in her relationship with Hal, figured out the rules of that relationship, how to make sure that he doesn't lash out at her, how to reduce the threat that he poses to her physically, and how to manage the abusive portions of their relationship. And she talks about how everything is in cycles, and just like the house, the haunting happens in cycles, where it gets particularly bad in September and then kind of down to a lower level the rest of the year. Hal is particularly bad when he's drinking, and then when he's not drinking, he levels out a bit. So she talks about that, and it goes from kind of comedic and like, learning to live with ghosts, to holy shit, these are things that she has learned how to do. She's learned this survival in her marriage, and now she's applying it to this haunted house. And so what ends up, like, the direction that we go in is that Hal starts to hear the voice of Master Vale, the big bad ghost that lives in the basement, and Vale is telling him to leave, get out of his house. He's not telling Margaret to leave. He's telling Hal to leave. And so where we end up here is these two alpha male, toxic masculine characters who are fighting over the right to be Margaret's abuser. And so it gets, but the tone of it, so it's a very serious topic, obviously, but the tone of the book largely stays kind of that light, dry humor that Margaret has, because it is her first person narration. So even though we're learning these terrible things that have happened to her, these terrible things that are done to her, these terrible things that she chooses to learn to survive, um, we're we're still hearing it in her voice of like, oh, I mean, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And you start to hear this denial that comes through. And you hear the denial in the first part of like, oh, well, the walls are bleeding. I mean, that happens in September. By October 1st, it'll all be gone. It's fine. And so you hear that she applies that same kind of approach to everything. But where Margaret draws the line is with her daughter, in that, and this is where we find out what happens, what happened between Hal and Catherine. There was one day when Hal was drinking and got angry about something, and was about to hit his daughter, and Margaret intervened, and that was where she drew the line of, you can do anything to me, but do not touch our daughter. She's off limits. And similar things are happening with the hauntings, is that she does not want her daughter to be exposed to, she doesn't want her daughter to see Elias, the biting ghost, and be bitten by this ghost. She doesn't want her daughter to know that the walls bleed. She doesn't want her daughter to be worried about the housekeeper ghost who moves things into between rooms and puts the dishes in the bathroom, and the sweaters under the sink and things like that. Like, she moves things around. She's trying to protect her daughter from all of this, because her daughter shows up. Hal disappears. Hal stops answering his phone, and Catherine shows up, and to figure out what is going on. So Margaret is hiding all of this, or trying to hide all of this. And as with an abusive relationship, as with mental health, mental illness, as with alcoholism, there's only so much Margaret can do to hide the effects or the symptoms of the haunting. So she is cleaning up after the ghost. She's moving things back. She's scrubbing at the blood on the walls so that her daughter won't see it. She's performing small rituals to make the ghosts go away periodically. She's trying to ignore the ghosts that are in the room that Catherine can't see, but she can see them. She's trying to ignore them so she can talk to Catherine in a normal way, and that doesn't work. So Catherine knows something is going on. She thinks it's mental illness. Margaret thinks it's ghosts. And that's the part that's where I'm going to stop with the spoilers. I don't want to tell you how the book ends, other than to say it ends dramatically, and it is so good, so well done. Yeah. So, what else do I want to say about this book? I just loved it so much. It's interesting to read a horror novel that is. It's definitely a horror novel. There's no question about that. It's got aspects of, I can see the influences of other like ghost stories that I've read in the past, but it's not just a ghost story. It's a story about a family. So it's this, I guess, juxtaposition of normal, like supernatural horror and natural horror, that the ghosts are monsters, but then also sometimes people are too. And the approach that Margaret takes to both is the same. And the lines that she draws, what she's willing to deal with, it's the same, regardless of whether the threat is a human or a ghost, or a series of ghosts in this case. There are a lot of ghosts in this house. A lot of ghosts. It's so many ghosts. Anyway, yeah, read this book. It's so good. I'm repeating myself now, so that probably means I should stop. I'm so glad I picked this up. Let me know if you, oh my gosh. Let me know if you've read The September House. I did not get a chance to look to see if Carissa Orlando has published anything else. I don't think she has. I think this is her first book. And I'm so excited to read more, because most, because I enjoyed it so much, but also most authors, sorry, I keep hitting my desk. It's shaking. Apologies. Um, because most authors, as they write more and more books, especially if they take their time to really craft each novel, or each book from, from start to finish, um, most authors get better with time, and I can't wait to see what else she comes up with. She also um, did put a paragraph of acknowledgement to her cat in her acknowledgments. She did thank her cat for teaching her the skill of writing with her laptop at a 45-degree angle so that her cat could be comfortable. And that's very relatable to me as well. I have definitely done some laptop gymnastics or book gymnastics. You will have seen that if you watch my self-care vlog from last week. You will have seen me do that with Mrs. Pickles, sitting on my chest and trying to read a book at the same time. So I totally get it. Anyway, I'll take down the spoiler banner because we're not spoiling anymore. If people decide they wanted to come back. So yeah, I highly recommend this book. I would love to read more. And so if you've read this, let me know what you think. If you've read this and you have other book recommendations that sort of scratch the same itch, I guess, or that kind of, if you like this, you would like these other books, I'd love to hear suggestions. I haven't read a ton of modern horror, to be honest. Most of the horror that I've read is older. So yeah, I'd love to read more. But regardless, I hope that you're having an excellent week. And yeah, and there will be more to come because I read all sorts of books in June. As I said, I read 17 books, so I'll definitely have more to talk about. And yeah, and so I hope that you, like me, will keep reading. And I will see you in the next one.